The sound of bone-meeting flesh echoed through the thin apartment walls. Lauren Mitchell curled into herself, trying to become smaller, invisible. Blood trickled from her split lip as Ray Donovan's voice boomed through their cramped Bridgeport apartment. "You think you're too good for us? Think you deserve better than this? Get out, get out!" His words slurred together, the half-empty whiskey bottle in his hand sloshing as he gestured wildly. Lauren's mother, Diane, stood in the corner, eyes vacant, body swaying slightly. The familiar smell of cheap alcohol and something chemical hung in the stale air. Outside, December winds howled through the projects, temperatures dropping below freezing as darkness fell. Snow began to accumulate on the cracked sidewalks of one of Connecticut's poorest neighborhoods. Lauren hadn't even grabbed a proper coat when Ray had dragged her by the hair and thrown her toward the door. "Please," she whispered, though the word hurt her bruised ribs. "It's snowing, just let me stay until morning." Ray's face contorted. "You've got 5 minutes to pack a bag, then I never want to see your face again." Lauren glanced at her mother, searching for any sign of intervention. There was none. Diane's gaze remained fixed on the peeling linoleum floor. With trembling hands, Lauren grabbed her school backpack, stuffing in her few treasured possessions: a dog-eared library book, a small photo album with pictures of her grandmother, the only person who had ever truly loved her, and the $17 she'd managed to hide inside an old sock. Her fingers brushed against her student ID and birth certificate, the small folder of documents she kept ready for exactly this moment. She had always known this day would come. The Bridgeport streets were deserted as Lauren trudged through accumulating snow. Each breath sent sharp pains through her ribcage, where Ray's boot had connected just hours earlier. 3 ribs, at least, were badly bruised, if not cracked. She had become an expert at self-diagnosing injuries over the 4 years since her mother had brought Ray into their lives. 4 years. 1,460 days of calculated torment. It had begun with small cruelties, accidental shoves, food withheld as punishment, insults disguised as jokes. But like a cancer, the violence had grown, metastasized, consuming everything in its path until Lauren's entire existence revolved around survival. She walked without direction, each step taking her further from the apartment, but no closer to safety. Downtown Bridgeport loomed ahead, its office buildings dark except for the occasional window, where overworked executives or cleaning staff moved like ghosts behind glass. Lauren had exactly nowhere to go. At 17, she was trapped in limbo, too old for immediate intervention by child services, too young for legal independence. The snow fell harder now, clinging to her eyelashes and melting against her feverish cheeks. Her thin sweater provided little protection against the biting cold. Her fingers had long since gone numb, and an alarming drowsiness began to settle over her. Lauren had read enough to know what that meant. Hypothermia was setting in. In desperation, she ducked into an alley behind a tall glass building, seeking any shelter from the relentless wind. A service entrance provided a small overhang. Nearby, flattened cardboard boxes had been stacked for recycling. With frozen fingers, Lauren arranged them into a makeshift shelter, crawling inside like a wounded animal. From her cocoon, she watched snowflakes dance in the yellow glow of security lights. How had it come to this? Once, she had been a bright student, with dreams of college scholarships and escape. Now she was just another invisible statistic, another throwaway kid that the system had failed. Her mind drifted to earlier that day, to what had triggered Ray's latest explosion. She'd received an acceptance letter to a special science program, an achievement that should have been celebrated. Instead, when Ray found the letter, he'd torn it to pieces before her eyes. "You think you're smarter than me?" he had snarled. "Think you're going somewhere? Nobody wants you. Nobody will ever want you." Lauren's teeth chattered violently as she tried to tuck her hands into her armpits for warmth. The pain in her side made every breath a struggle. She wondered if anyone would even notice if she didn't survive the night. Would her mother report her missing? Would her teachers wonder why she wasn't in class? Or would she simply fade away, unmourned and unremembered? Exhaustion pulled at her consciousness. She knew she should stay awake, should keep moving, but her body betrayed her as her eyelids grew heavy. Just a short rest, she told herself, just enough to gather strength to find somewhere safer. As consciousness slipped away, Lauren heard the distant sound of a door opening. Footsteps approached, crunching in the fresh snow. A figure loomed over her cardboard shelter, a tall man in an expensive coat, his face illuminated briefly by the glow of a cell phone. Their eyes met, and Lauren saw something unexpected in the stranger's gaze. Not disgust or dismissal, but recognition. "My God," the man whispered, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "Are you all right?" Lauren tried to answer, but her lips wouldn't cooperate. The world tilted sideways as darkness crept in from the edges of her vision. The last thing she registered was strong arms lifting her and a voice calling for help. Then, mercifully, nothing. In the warmth of unconsciousness, Lauren couldn't know that this moment, this chance encounter behind an unremarkable building on a snowy December night, would be the dividing line of her life. That everything would later be measured as before or after the night Harrison Wells found her dying in the snow, and made a decision that would change both their destinies forever. Warmth. That was the first sensation that registered in Lauren's consciousness. Warmth in the absence of pain, or rather, the dull, medicated distance from it. Her eyelids felt impossibly heavy as she fought to open them, blinking against soft, indirect light. "She's waking up," a male voice said quietly. Lauren's survival instincts kicked in immediately. She tried to sit up, only to be rewarded with a sharp stab of pain in her ribcage that forced a gasp from her lips. "Easy now," the voice continued. "You're safe. No one is going to hurt you here." As her vision cleared, Lauren found herself in an unfamiliar room. Not a hospital. It was too elegant, with cream-colored walls and expensive-looking furniture. She lay on a leather couch beneath a cashmere blanket, an IV stand beside her. A distinguished man in his early 40s watched her with concern in his deep-set eyes. Behind him stood a silver-haired man in a doctor's white coat. "Where am I?" Lauren's voice came out as a rasp. "My office," the younger man replied. "I'm Harrison Wells. I found you behind my building last night." The events of the previous evening came flooding back. Ray's rage, the brutal kicks to her ribs, the snow, the cardboard shelter. Lauren instinctively reached for her backpack. "Your belongings are safe," Harrison assured her, nodding toward a nearby chair where her worn backpack sat. "Dr. Winters here has treated your immediate injuries, but you really should be in a hospital." Lauren shook her head, wincing at the movement. "No hospitals, please." Harrison and the doctor exchanged glances. "Young lady," Dr. Winters began, his tone gentle but firm, "you have 3 bruised ribs, mild hypothermia, malnutrition, and numerous contusions in various stages of healing. Some of those injuries are recent, others weeks or months old." "I'm clumsy," Lauren said automatically, the lie practiced and hollow. Harrison's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Dr. Winters is a friend. He's not required to report anything unless you want him to." The doctor cleared his throat. "I'll give you 2 a moment. The IV should remain for another hour to complete the fluids and medication." He packed his bag and quietly exited the room. Silence stretched between them. Lauren took in more details of her surroundings. The wall of windows overlooking the Bridgeport skyline, the minimalist but clearly expensive furniture, the discreet security cameras in the corners. This wasn't just an office, it was the domain of someone powerful. "You're that tech CEO," she realized suddenly. "The medical software guy. I saw you in my economics textbook." A hint of a smile touched Harrison's lips. Guilty as charged. Though the textbooks usually leave out the more interesting parts of the story, Lauren shifted uncomfortably under his gaze. "Why am I here and not at a hospital or in police custody?" "Because you looked at me with the same expression my son has when he wakes from nightmares," Harrison answered simply. "And because I've spent enough time in hospitals recently to know sometimes they're not what people need." Something in his voice, a carefully controlled pain, made Lauren look more closely at him. Behind the polished exterior of success, she saw exhaustion etched in the lines around his eyes. This was a man carrying his own burdens. "I should go," Lauren said, though she had nowhere to go. "Thank you for not leaving me in the snow." Harrison leaned forward, clasping his hands. "Before you do, I'd like to know your name." Lauren hesitated. Giving her real name could lead back to Ray, to more violence. As if reading her thoughts, Harrison added, "Whatever you're running from, whoever you're running from, I can help. I have resources, connections. Why would you help me? You don't even know me." 2 years ago, Harrison said, his voice low, "my wife died of pancreatic cancer. Despite all my money, all my influence, I couldn't save her. Since then, I've been existing, not living. Last night was the first time in 2 years I felt anything beyond grief or numbness." He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the snow-covered city. I have 2 children who barely remember what it's like to have a father fully present in their lives. I have a company that saves lives through medical technology, yet I couldn't save the one life that mattered most to me." He turned back to face her. "So perhaps helping you is selfish. Perhaps I need to save someone because I couldn't save her." The raw honesty in his words left Lauren speechless. In her 17 years, adults had only ever shown her manipulation and lies. This straightforward vulnerability was unfamiliar territory. "Lauren," she said finally. "Lauren Mitchell." Harrison nodded. "Thank you, Lauren. Now, would you tell me who did this to you?" The question hung in the air between them. Lauren's heart raced. To speak Ray's name aloud, to acknowledge the years of abuse felt dangerous, as if naming the monster would summon him. "My stepfather," she whispered, the words escaping before she could stop them. "For 4 years now. My mom. She chooses not to see." Harrison's expression remained neutral, but something fierce flashed in his eyes. "You're 17. Lauren nodded, wondering how he knew. "Your student ID," he explained, noting her confusion. "I needed to identify you. I hope you can forgive the invasion of privacy." He returned to his seat, maintaining a respectful distance. "Lauren, I'd like to make you an offer. I have a large house in Greenwich with a separate staff wing. You could stay there, recover properly, until you turn 18 and can legally make your own decisions." Lauren stared at him in disbelief. "You want me to come live in your house? You don't even know me. I could be anyone. You're someone who needs help. That's enough for now." Harrison's expression softened slightly. "There would be conditions, of course. You'd need to continue your education, and perhaps help with some light work around the house. My late wife's library needs organizing. The books have been gathering dust since—" He left the sentence unfinished, but Lauren understood. The books were another thing he couldn't face after his loss. "Your children," Lauren said carefully. "Would they be okay with a stranger moving in?" "Thomas and Abigail," Harrison replied, a genuine smile briefly warming his features. "Thomas is 12, brilliant but angry at the world since his mother died. Abby is 8, too quiet for a child her age. Having someone new around might actually be good for them." Lauren's mind raced. The offer seemed impossible, too good to be true. In her experience, when something seemed too good, it usually was. There was always a hidden price. "Why should I trust you?" she asked bluntly. "You shouldn't," Harrison replied, surprising her. "Trust should be earned, not given blindly. Come to the house. Meet my family, my staff. If at any point you feel uncomfortable, my driver will take you wherever you want to go, no questions asked. You'll have your own room with a lock on the door, and my number programmed into a phone I'll provide." He reached into his desk and produced a business card, placing it on the coffee table between them. "Think about it. Dr. Winters says you need at least a week of rest for those ribs. You need somewhere safe to recover." Lauren picked up the card, tracing the embossed logo of Wells Medical Systems with her fingertip. Every instinct honed by years of survival screamed that this couldn't be real. Yet when she looked into Harrison Wells' eyes, she saw something she hadn't encountered in years: sincerity. "1 week," she said finally, "just until I figure out my next move." Harrison nodded, not pushing further. "1 week. My driver, Marcus, will take us to Greenwich when you're ready." As he stepped out to make arrangements, Lauren closed her eyes, exhaustion washing over her again. 1 week in a mansion to heal and plan her next steps. 7 days of safety before she'd need to face the world again. She couldn't know then that 1 week would stretch into 2, then a month, and that the temporary sanctuary offered by a grieving CEO would become the foundation for a new beginning neither of them had imagined possible. The Wells estate sprawled across 5 acres in Greenwich's most exclusive neighborhood, a monument to success that seemed to exist in another universe compared to the cramped apartment Lauren had left behind. As Marcus, the driver, guided the Bentley through wrought iron gates, Lauren pressed her forehead against the cool window glass, taking in manicured gardens now blanketed in snow and the imposing stone mansion at the end of the circular drive. "It's a bit much, I know," Harrison said from beside her, noting her expression. "Caroline, my late wife, always said we should downsize to somewhere less ostentatious. I suppose I never got around to it." The car came to a gentle stop at the front entrance, where a slender woman in her late 30s waited, her arms crossed tightly over her chest despite the cold. Her resemblance to Harrison was subtle but unmistakable, the same watchful eyes, though hers held none of his warmth. That's Catherine, my sister-in-law, Harrison explained quietly. Caroline's sister. She's been helping with the children since, well, she's been a godsend, truly. Lauren nodded. Suddenly acutely aware of her second-hand clothes and the fading bruise on her jawline, she'd spent the past 3 days recovering in a hotel suite Harrison had arranged, attended by Dr. Winters and provided with new clothes that actually fit. Still, nothing could prepare her for this, for the scrutiny she was about to face. "Remember our agreement," Harrison said, as Marcus opened the car door. "1 week, no obligations. If you want to leave at any point, just say the word." Catherine's appraisal was swift and cutting as Lauren stepped from the car. The woman's gaze traveled from Lauren's discount store sneakers to her healing split lip, her expression a careful mask of civility threaded with suspicion. "Harrison? A word?" Catherine's tone made it clear this wasn't a request. She turned to Lauren with a practiced smile. "Mrs. Sullivan will show you to your room. I'm sure you'd like to rest after your journey." An older woman with silver hair and kind eyes appeared at Lauren's elbow, gesturing toward the house. "This way, miss. Mind the steps. They can be slippery." As Mrs. Sullivan led her inside, Lauren could hear Catherine's urgent whispers to Harrison. "Have you completely lost your mind? Bringing a strange girl into this house around the children?" The entrance hall of the Wells mansion soared 3 stories high, crowned with a crystal chandelier that scattered light like diamonds across marble floors. Lauren followed Mrs. Sullivan up a grand staircase, past oil paintings in gilded frames and antiques that belonged in museums. "The family rooms are in the East Wing," Mrs. Sullivan explained. "Your room is in the West Wing with the staff quarters. Mr. Wells thought you might prefer more privacy." They passed through a more modest corridor until reaching a door at the end. Mrs. Sullivan produced a key, presenting it to Lauren with a small smile. "Your own key, dear. No one else has a copy, not even Mr. Wells." She opened the door to reveal a room larger than the entire apartment Lauren had shared with her mother and Ray. A queen-sized bed with a pale blue comforter stood against one wall. Bookshelves lined another. A desk beneath a window overlooked the snow-covered gardens, and a private bathroom gleamed with marble and chrome. "It's the former governess's suite," Mrs. Sullivan explained. "No one's used it since young Thomas outgrew the need for a live-in tutor." Lauren stepped inside, overwhelmed. "This is for me?" "Mr. Wells had it prepared specially. Said you needed a proper place to heal." Mrs. Sullivan's eyes softened. "Dinner is at 7 in the main dining room, but I can bring a tray up if you'd prefer to rest. The kitchen is always open if you get hungry between meals." After Mrs. Sullivan departed, Lauren sank onto the bed, running her hand over the softest comforter she'd ever felt. On the nightstand sat a brand new iPhone, programmed with Harrison's number as promised. A handwritten note beside it read, "For emergencies or just to talk. HW." Lauren allowed herself exactly 5 minutes to absorb the luxury surrounding her. 5 minutes to feel the wonder, the disbelief. Then, pragmatism reasserted itself. This wasn't her world. This was temporary sanctuary, nothing more. She unpacked her meager belongings, placing her grandmother's photo on the nightstand and tucking her $17 into a drawer. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Lauren opened the door to find a small girl with solemn blue eyes and honey-blonde braids. "You're the girl Daddy rescued," the child stated matter-of-factly. "I'm Abigail. Abby, I'm 8. I'm Lauren, I'm 17. Abby tilted her head, studying Lauren with unnerving intensity. "Do you like stories?" Before Lauren could answer, Catherine appeared at the end of the hallway. "Abigail Wells, what did I tell you about bothering our guest?" "I'm not bothering," Abby protested. "I'm introducing myself. That's good manners." Catherine's lips pressed into a thin line as she approached. "Nevertheless, it's time for your piano practice. Miss Mitchell needs to rest." As Catherine led Abby away, the little girl looked back over her shoulder. "You can come listen to me play if you want. I'm not very good yet." Lauren found herself smiling, the first genuine smile in longer than she could remember. That evening, Lauren chose to take dinner in her room, not yet ready to face the family dynamic she'd glimpsed. Mrs. Sullivan arrived with a tray laden with more food than Lauren typically saw in a week: roast chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, fresh vegetables, and chocolate cake for dessert. "Mr. Wells asked me to bring you this as well," Mrs. Sullivan added, placing a small stack of books beside the tray. "Said you might want something to read while you recover." The books were an eclectic mix: recent bestsellers, classics, and a few young adult titles Lauren had always wanted to read but could never afford. The thoughtfulness of the gesture made her throat tighten unexpectedly. Later that night, unable to sleep despite the comfort of her new surroundings, Lauren ventured out to explore. The mansion was quiet, illuminated only by subtle security lighting. She followed the scent of books until she found the library, a two-story room with floor-to-ceiling shelves and rolling ladders to reach the highest volumes. Couldn't sleep either, huh? The voice startled her. A boy sat in a window seat, knees drawn up to his chest, a star chart spread across his lap. Though younger, he had Harrison's features, but his eyes held a wariness that made him seem older than 12. "You must be Thomas," Lauren said cautiously, "and you're the charity case my dad dragged home." His tone wasn't cruel, merely factual. "He collects broken things, you know, especially since Mom died." Lauren didn't take the bait. "Interesting reading choice for midnight," she nodded toward the star chart. Thomas shrugged. "I'm mapping the winter constellations. Dad used to take me stargazing before—" He trailed off, then abruptly changed course. "Why are you really here? What do you want from us?" "A week to figure out my next move," Lauren answered honestly. "Nothing more." Thomas studied her, searching for deception. "The last person Dad tried to help was my math tutor. She sold a story to some tabloid about the grieving billionaire and his motherless children. We had reporters camped outside for weeks." Lauren moved to the window, looking out at the clear night sky. "Orion is particularly bright tonight." Thomas blinked in surprise. "You know constellations? When home isn't safe, you find other places to be. Rooftops are good for stargazing. No one looks for you there." Lauren pointed upward. "Betelgeuse, Rigel in there. See how the belt points to Sirius?" For a moment, Thomas forgot his suspicion. "You really can see it. Dad always said you could use Orion's belt to find the brightest star in the sky, but I could never quite get the alignment right." They sat in silence for several minutes, two strangers finding momentary connection in ancient light. "He doesn't laugh anymore," Thomas said finally, so quietly Lauren barely heard him. "Not since Mum. But this morning at breakfast, Abby knocked over her orange juice and Dad actually laughed. First time in 2 years, right after he told us you were coming to stay." Before Lauren could respond, footsteps approached. Harrison appeared in the doorway, surprise evident on his face. "Quite the late-night astronomy society we have here," he observed, his voice gentle. "Everything all right?" Thomas quickly rolled up his star chart. "Just showing the new girl Orion's belt," he said, an unspoken understanding passing between him and Lauren. "Good night, Dad." He paused beside Lauren. "See you around, I guess." After Thomas departed, Harrison settled into an armchair, gesturing for Lauren to take the one opposite. "I hope the room is comfortable." "It's more than I ever could have imagined," Lauren admitted. "Everything is. I keep waiting for the catch." Harrison's expression grew serious. "The only catch is that you deserve better than what life has given you so far. And perhaps selfishly, I need to remember there's more to life than work and grief." He glanced around the library, at the thousands of books gathering dust. Caroline loved this room. It was her sanctuary. After she died, I couldn't bear to come in here. None of us could. Lauren followed his gaze, noting now the thin layer of dust on some shelves, the disorganized volumes, the general sense of neglect beneath the grandeur. "You mentioned the library needed organizing," she said carefully. "It does." Harrison stood, moving to a shelf and running his finger along leather-bound spines. "Caroline had a system, but none of us understood it. The library was her domain. Now—" He shrugged, the gesture conveying what words couldn't. The space was a mausoleum to his grief. "I could help," Lauren offered. "While I'm here, I mean. It would give me something to do, a way to thank you." Harrison turned, his expression softening. "You don't need to thank me, Lauren. But if you want a project, the library is yours. Just be gentle with it. With her books. They're all I have left of her voice." The next morning, Lauren began. She started small, one shelf at a time, discovering Caroline Wells through the books she'd treasured. Fiction arranged not alphabetically, but by emotional resonance. Medical texts organized chronologically, poetry collections grouped by theme. On the third day, as Lauren carefully removed books from a bottom shelf, she discovered a hidden drawer built into the paneling. Inside lay a collection of leather-bound notebooks, each filled with Caroline's flowing handwriting and delicate illustrations. Children's stories, dozens of them, handcrafted with obvious love and never published. Lauren sat cross-legged on the library floor, entranced by Caroline's imagination. Stories about stars coming down to earth, about brave children overcoming fears, about animals with secret talents. The illustrations were charming, watercolors and ink sketches that brought the tales to life. So absorbed was she in her discovery that Lauren didn't notice Abby entering the library until the little girl spoke directly behind her. "Those are Mommy's special books," Abby said, her voice small. "She used to read them to me before bed." Lauren carefully closed the notebook. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude." Abby shook her head, blonde braids swinging. "It's okay. Can you read one to me?" Aunt Catherine tries, but she doesn't do the voices right. Something in Lauren's chest constricted painfully. "I'd be honored, but only if your dad says it's okay." That evening, with Harrison's emotional permission, Lauren read one of Caroline's stories to Abby at bedtime. She did all the voices, bringing the tale of a brave little star to life, just as its author had intended. From the doorway, Harrison watched silently, his eyes bright with unshed tears. And down the hall, though he pretended not to listen, Thomas sat outside his bedroom door, absorbing every word of his mother's imagination. Something shifted in the Wells household that night, a thawing in the perpetual winter that had gripped the family since Caroline's death. And for Lauren, who had never known what a real family could be, it was both beautiful and terrifying. Because temporary sanctuary was one thing, but finding a place where she might belong? That was far more dangerous to her carefully guarded heart. 3 weeks had passed since Lauren first stepped into the Wells mansion, far beyond the one-week agreement she had made with Harrison. What began as temporary sanctuary had evolved into something neither of them had anticipated. The library transformation progressed steadily, with Caroline's books finding new order while maintaining the spirit of her original system. Lauren's presence in the household had become natural, almost necessary. Each night she read one of Caroline's stories to Abby, their ritual expanding to include Thomas, who no longer pretended disinterest, but pulled up a chair alongside his sister's bed. Harrison often stood in the doorway, watching his children respond to words they'd thought lost forever. On this particular evening, Harrison had arranged a family dinner in the greenhouse, a glass structure attached to the east wing that Caroline had filled with exotic plants from around the world. The space had been neglected after her death, but at Lauren's suggestion, the gardener had begun its restoration. "Daddy, can Lauren sit next to me?" Abby asked as they gathered around the table, surrounded by newly pruned ferns and flowering orchids. Catherine, who had been setting out wine glasses, stiffened visibly. "Abigail, Lauren isn't family, she works here." "Actually," Harrison interjected gently, "Lauren is our guest. And yes, Abby, she can sit wherever she likes." The meal was the first truly light-hearted one the Wells family had shared in years. Thomas enthusiastically described his science project on constellations, for which Lauren had helped him build a rotating star map. Abby recounted her piano recital, where she'd finally mastered the piece that had frustrated her for months. "Lauren's been helping me practice," Abby explained, beaming. "She sits with me every afternoon." "I didn't know you played piano," Harrison said, turning to Lauren with interest. Lauren shook her head. "I don't, but I can read music from my school choir days. Enough to tell when a note is wrong, at least." Catherine set down her fork with precision. "Speaking of school, Harrison, have you given any thought to Lauren's education? Surely she should be enrolled somewhere if she's staying." The question hung in the air, addressing the unspoken reality that Lauren's presence had extended well beyond her initial week. "Actually," Lauren began, "I've been meaning to talk about that. I've applied for my GED. With your permission, Mr. Wells, I'd like to take the test next month." Harrison looked surprised but pleased. "Of course. But why not finish high school traditionally? I could arrange enrollment at any school in the area." Lauren's fingers twisted the napkin in her lap. "I've missed too much this year, and this way I could start community college courses in the spring." "College?" Thomas perked up. "What would you study?" "Library science, maybe," Lauren said, a small smile playing at her lips. "I seem to have a knack for it." Harrison raised his glass. "To Lauren's future endeavors, whatever they may be." Everyone but Catherine raised their glasses. The sister-in-law's expression remained carefully neutral, but her eyes held calculation. After dinner, as the children helped Mrs. Sullivan clear the table, a new tradition Lauren had subtly instituted, Catherine cornered Harrison by the vine-covered trellis. "This has gone far enough," she hissed, keeping her voice low. "She's embedding herself in this family, Harrison. The children are getting attached." Is that such a terrible thing? Harrison challenged, watching as Lauren showed Thomas how to properly fold napkins. They're happier than they've been in years. She's using you, Catherine insisted. A street-smart girl who conveniently needed rescue. Who's suddenly perfect with your children? Who's organizing Caroline's most personal possessions? Harrison's jaw tightened. Lauren has been nothing but respectful of Caroline's memory. If anything, she's helping preserve it better than any of us have. Catherine's eyes narrowed. Have you even verified her story? Checked if this abusive stepfather actually exists? For all you know, she could be making it all up. The suggestion hit Harrison like a physical blow. He'd respected Lauren's privacy, never pressing for details about her past. Now, doubt crept in unbidden. What if Catherine was right? What if his grief had made him an easy target? I've hired a private investigator, Catherine continued, seeing his hesitation. For the children's safety. The report should come tomorrow. You did what? Harrison's voice rose before he caught himself. Catherine, that's completely inappropriate. Lauren is entitled to her privacy. Your naivety will be the ruin of this family, Catherine replied, her tone cold. Caroline would be appalled at your recklessness. The invocation of his late wife silenced Harrison momentarily, allowing Catherine to walk away with the last word. Later that night, long after the children had gone to bed, Harrison found himself outside Lauren's door, Catherine's accusations echoing in his mind. He raised his hand to knock, then hesitated. What right did he have to demand Lauren's truth? Yet, if he was putting his children at risk, the door opened before he could decide, revealing Lauren in a borrowed robe, a book in her hand. Mr. Wells, she said, surprised. Is everything okay? Harrison, he corrected automatically. After 3 weeks of family dinners, I think we're past formalities. Lauren nodded, stepping back to invite him in. Her room showed signs of careful personalization, books stacked by the bed, a star chart Thomas had given her pinned to the wall, a childish drawing from Abby on the desk. I wanted to talk about your plans, Harrison began carefully. The GED, college, it seems you're building a future. Trying to, Lauren admitted, sitting on the edge of the bed. Thanks to you. Harrison took the desk chair, maintaining a respectful distance. Catherine raised some concerns this evening. Lauren's expression closed immediately. I see. No, you don't, Harrison sighed. She thinks I should have verified your background, your story, that I've been reckless. And you want to know if I've been lying to you. Lauren's voice was flat, resigned. I want to know if I can help you more effectively, Harrison corrected. Your stepfather. Ray Donovan, Lauren supplied, her face paling at speaking the name aloud. Ex-con, works construction when he's sober enough. Been with my mom for 4 years. Started with shoving, graduated to closed fists, then whatever was handy. Her voice became clinical, detached. The first time he broke a bone, my wrist, I was 14. My mom told the ER I fell skateboarding. Harrison felt sick. Lauren, I'm sorry. 3 complaint calls to police. No charges filed, she continued mechanically. 2 school counselors tried to intervene. Mom denied everything. CPS visited once, but Ray cleaned up good. Said all the right things. By then, I'd learned to hide the bruises better anyway. She reached for her backpack, pulling out a worn manila envelope. My medical records, police reports, school documentation. I keep copies of everything. Never know when you'll need proof, right? Her laugh held no humor. Go ahead. Verify away. I've got nothing to hide. Harrison didn't touch the envelope. I believe you, Lauren. I've believed you from the beginning. The hardness in her expression cracked. Then why this conversation? Because Catherine has hired a private investigator to look into your background without my knowledge or consent. The report comes tomorrow. Harrison ran a hand through his hair. I wanted to prepare you to hear the truth from you directly. Lauren stood abruptly, pacing the room. So your sister-in-law is investigating me? Looking for what? Criminal history? I shoplifted food once when Ray drank the grocery money. Got caught, got community service? Is that what she's looking for? I don't know what she's looking for, Harrison admitted, but I'll shut it down. This invasion of your privacy... No. Lauren cut him off. Let her have her investigation. I have nothing to hide. She paused. But Ray, if they contact him... Harrison understood immediately. You're worried he'll come looking for you. Lauren nodded, arms wrapping around herself protectively. He doesn't care about me, but he hates losing control. If he finds out where I am, who I'm with... Harrison stood, crossing the room to stand before her. Lauren, look at me. She raised her eyes to his reluctantly. "If Ray Donovan ever comes near you again, he'll regret it for the rest of his life." The steel in Harrison's voice was unexpected. "I protect what matters to me. My company, my children, and you." The words hung between them, significant and irrevocable. "You don't have to protect me," Lauren whispered. "I'm not your responsibility." "Maybe not," Harrison agreed, "but perhaps I want to be responsible for helping rewrite your story." The next morning arrived with slate-gray skies and the promise of snow. Lauren helped Abby with her hair, while Thomas gathered his books for school, their morning routine now comfortably established. Harrison had left before dawn for an emergency board meeting, promising to return for dinner. Catherine arrived mid-morning, a manila envelope clutched in her hand and triumph in her eyes. She found Lauren in the library, cataloguing the last shelf of Caroline's collection. "Just the person I was looking for," Catherine announced, her voice dripping with false pleasantry. "I have some interesting reading material." Lauren carefully placed a book on the shelf before turning. "Good morning to you too, Catherine." "Let's dispense with pleasantries," Catherine said, slapping the envelope on the desk. "Did you think we wouldn't find out? That Harrison would just continue playing White Knight without ever learning the truth?" Lauren's stomach clenched, but she kept her expression neutral. "And what truth is that?" Catherine pulled several papers from the envelope. "Ray Donovan does exist. Ex-con drunk abuser, that part checks out. But what's interesting is what happened 3 days before Harrison found you." She slid a police report across the desk. Lauren recognized it immediately, the complaint she'd filed after Ray's last attack, the one that had led to her being thrown out. "You left out the part where you attacked him with a kitchen knife," Catherine said triumphantly, "where you threatened to, and I quote, cut him open from throat to navel if he ever touched you again." Lauren's hands trembled slightly. "Self-defense. He had broken a chair over my back the night before." "A violent past you conveniently omitted," Catherine pressed. "And there's more. Your mother, Diane, she's looking for you, claims you stole money from them before running away." $17, Lauren said quietly. "My money. Tips from a diner where I washed dishes after school." Catherine continued as if she hadn't spoken. "She's filed a missing persons report. The police are looking for you, Lauren. How do you think Harrison will react when he learns he's harboring a runaway minor, when his reputation is dragged through the mud, when his children are exposed to scandal?" Lauren felt the walls closing in. Everything she'd feared was coming to pass. The sanctuary was crumbling. "What do you want, Catherine?" she asked, her voice steady despite her internal panic. "I want you gone," Catherine replied simply. "Today, before Harrison returns, before you do any more damage to this family. And if I refuse, then I call the police. I'm sure they'd be very interested to know that the billionaire CEO of Wells Medical Systems is keeping a 17-year-old runaway in his home. The tabloids would have a field day." Catherine's smile was shark-like. "Harrison's company is negotiating a major government contract right now. Any hint of scandal could derail it completely." Lauren knew she was trapped. She'd spent her life recognizing no-win scenarios, and this was certainly one. The thought of Harrison's reputation being destroyed, his children exposed to public scrutiny, his company suffering, all because of her, was unbearable. "I'll need an hour to pack," she said finally. Catherine nodded, satisfied. "I'll arrange a car to take you to the bus station. And Lauren, if you contact Harrison or the children after you leave, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you really are." As Catherine left, Lauren sank into the library chair, her mind racing. She had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. The $17 in her drawer would barely get her a bus ticket, let alone a place to stay. Winter still gripped Connecticut, with temperatures well below freezing at night. Yet the alternative, staying and bringing destruction to the only people who had shown her kindness in years, was unthinkable. With mechanical efficiency, Lauren packed her few belongings. She wrote 3 letters, one to Abby, one to Thomas, and one to Harrison. In each, she explained her departure without mentioning Catherine's ultimatum. To Abby, she promised that the stories would always be waiting for her. To Thomas, she included her personal star chart, with notes on where to find the rarest constellations. And to Harrison she wrote the hardest words of all, that he had done what the title of one of Caroline's stories promised, the man who changed a life with kindness. That in 3 short weeks, he had shown her what family could be, what safety felt like, what it meant to be valued. that she would carry this knowledge with her always, using it as a blueprint for the life she would build. She sealed the letters and placed them on the library desk, knowing Catherine would likely intercept them, but unable to leave without saying goodbye in some form. As promised, a car waited at the service entrance. The driver, not Marcus but a stranger, loaded her backpack into the trunk without comment. Lauren took one last look at the Wells mansion, memorizing its details. Then she climbed into the back seat and closed the door on the only real home she had ever known. The drive to the bus station passed in a blur. Lauren clutched her backpack, containing her documents, her grandmother's photos, and now a small notebook of Caroline's stories she had secretly kept, her one act of theft from the Wells family, committed not for monetary gain, but to preserve a connection she couldn't bear to sever completely. At the station, the driver handed her an envelope containing $500 and a note in Catherine's handwriting. To ensure you go far away and stay there. The irony wasn't lost on Lauren. Catherine's bribe would provide temporary safety that Ray had never offered. She purchased a ticket to Boston, the farthest city she could reach, with a portion of the money. The rest she would need for food and immediate shelter. As Lauren sat on the hard plastic seat in the terminal, waiting for her bus to board, snow began to fall outside the grimy windows. She thought of that first night, when Harrison had found her nearly frozen behind his building. How different things might have been if he had simply walked past, if he had called security instead of offering his coat, if he had listened to pragmatism rather than compassion. The station's intercom crackled with the announcement that her bus would board in 15 minutes. Lauren gathered her backpack, prepared to walk away from the brief chapter of warmth in her otherwise cold existence. She had survived before Harrison Wells. She would survive after him. "Lauren!" The voice cut through the station's ambient noise like a beacon. Lauren turned to see Thomas running toward her, snowflakes melting in his dark hair, his face flushed with exertion. Behind him came Abby, her hand clasped firmly in Harrison's. "I found your letters," Thomas gasped, reaching her first. "You weren't even going to say goodbye?" Lauren stared in disbelief as the Wells family surrounded her. "How did you—" "I came home early," Harrison explained, his expression a mix of concern and determination. "The board meeting ended sooner than expected. I found your letters in the library." Abby threw her arms around Lauren's waist. "You can't go. Who will read Mommy's stories?" Over the children's heads, Harrison's eyes met Lauren's. "Catherine showed me the investigator's report, all of it, including the parts she conveniently left out when she confronted you." Lauren felt her heart sink. "Then you know about the knife, about my mother filing a report. I know you defended yourself against a monster after enduring years of abuse," Harrison corrected firmly. "And I know Diane Donovan withdrew the missing persons report 3 days ago after accepting a significant cash payment from Ray, who apparently found a more lucrative use for you." Lauren's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" Harrison's expression darkened. "Ray contacted my office this morning, demanding money to forget about his runaway daughter. Apparently, Catherine's investigator left a trail that led straight back to you. Ray threatened to go to the media with a story about me keeping a teenage girl in my home unless I paid him off." "Oh, God," Lauren whispered, horrified. "Harrison, I'm so sorry. This is exactly what I was trying to prevent by leaving, by running away," he corrected gently. Again. "But Lauren, you don't need to run anymore." He reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a folded document. "This is a restraining order against Ray Donovan, effective immediately, and this," he produced a second document, "is a petition for emergency guardianship until you turn 18, if you want it." Lauren stared at the papers, unable to process what was happening. "Catherine overstepped," Harrison continued. "She's been asked to leave the house. She was wrong about many things, but most importantly, she was wrong about what Caroline would have wanted." His voice softened. "Caroline would have opened our door to you without hesitation. She would have seen what I see. A brave young woman who deserves a chance at the life she's been denied. But your reputation, your company, are far less important than doing what's right," Harrison finished firmly. "Ray Donovan made a critical error when he tried to extort me. He revealed his true character, proving every claim you've made about him. My legal team is already building a case against him for his years of abuse." The station intercom announced final boarding for the Boston bus. Lauren looked from the departure gate to the family standing before her. Thomas, with his skeptical intelligence now tempered by genuine concern, Abby with her unguarded affection, and Harrison, whose eyes held a promise Lauren had never dared to trust before. "It's your choice, Lauren," Harrison said quietly. "No one will force you to stay, but if you want a home, a real home with us, it's yours. Not as an employee or a charity case, but as family." Abby tugged at Lauren's hand. "Please stay. Daddy laughs when you're around." Thomas nodded in agreement. "And I still need help with the summer constellations." Lauren looked at the bus, then back at the three people who had somehow become the center of her world in just 3 weeks. People who had come after her, who had fought for her, who wanted her to stay not for what she could do for them, but simply because they cared. In that moment, Lauren understood what the title of her story truly meant. Harrison Wells hadn't just rescued her from the snow that night in December. He had rescued her from a life of believing she wasn't worth fighting for, and in doing so, he had indeed changed her destiny forever. "I want to stay," she said, her voice breaking as she spoke the most honest words of her life. "I want to come home." Harrison's smile was like sunrise after the longest night. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders as Thomas grabbed her backpack and Abby took her hand. Together they walked out of the bus station into the gently falling snow, leaving behind the path of isolation Lauren had walked for so long and stepping into a future none of them could have imagined 3 weeks earlier. As they drove back to Greenwich, Lauren watched the world transform under its blanket of white, everything familiar made new again. She thought of Caroline's stories waiting to be read, of stars yet to be charted with Thomas, of Abby's piano pieces still to be mastered, of Harrison, who had opened not just his home but his heart. The car turned through the gates of the Wells estate, and this time, Lauren didn't see an imposing monument to wealth. She saw, simply and wonderfully, home. 6 months later, on a perfect June morning, Lauren stood before the full-length mirror in what was now permanently her room in the Wells mansion. The reflection that greeted her bore little resemblance to the battered girl Harrison had found in the snow that December night. Her hair, once lank from stress and poor nutrition, now fell in healthy waves past her shoulders. The haunted look in her green eyes had been replaced by something rarer, hope. Today was her 18th birthday, and also the day she would officially become a published illustrator. On her bed lay the finished product of months of work, a hardcover book titled The Little Star Who Found Home, written by Caroline Wells and illustrated by Lauren Mitchell. It was the first in what would become a series, bringing Caroline's stories to children everywhere. Harrison had arranged everything through his publishing contacts, insisting that Lauren's artwork was what Caroline would have wanted for her tales. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Abby peeked in, already dressed in a yellow sundress for the garden party planned for later that afternoon. "Daddy says the guests will start arriving in an hour," she announced, bouncing into the room and flopping onto Lauren's bed. "Will you do my hair like yours, with the braid crown?" Lauren smiled. "Of course, but be careful with the book, it's the first copy." Abby reverently picked up the book, tracing the embossed stars on its cover with her small finger. "It's beautiful. Mommy would have loved it." "I think so too," Lauren agreed, sitting beside Abby and beginning to section her blonde hair for braiding. The past 6 months had transformed all their lives. After the confrontation at the bus station, Harrison had indeed filed for emergency guardianship of Lauren. The judge, faced with overwhelming evidence of Ray's abuse and Diane's neglect, had granted the petition without hesitation. Ray, furious at being outmaneuvered, had made one last attempt to cause trouble by selling a twisted version of events to a tabloid. The story had lasted exactly 1 news cycle before Harrison's legal team shut it down with evidence of Ray's extortion attempt. Catherine had retreated to her home in Boston, her relationship with Harrison strained but not severed. She had sent a terse but sincere apology to Lauren 2 months later, acknowledging that her fear of losing her connection to Caroline's children had driven her to act desperately. Lauren had accepted the apology with grace that surprised even herself, perhaps because she understood what it meant to fear losing the only family you had left. "Do you think Miss Winters will come to the party?" Abby asked, referring to Lauren's GED tutor. "Thomas has a crush on her, even though she's way older." Lauren chuckled, pinning another section of Abby's hair. "Miss Winters is 25, not ancient. And yes, she's coming. So is Dr. Winters. Apparently he and your dad have become good friends." "Daddy has lots of friends now," Abby observed. "He never used to invite people over after Mommy died." The observation, delivered with a child's direct honesty, struck Lauren as profoundly true. Harrison had gradually emerged from his self-imposed isolation over the past months. The house that had once felt like a mausoleum, now regularly filled with laughter, conversation, and life. Weekly family dinners had expanded to include trusted friends and colleagues. The gardens Caroline had loved were blooming again under the care of a full-time staff. The greenhouse, once neglected, now burst with tropical flowers. "There," Lauren said, securing the last pin in Abby's crown of braids. "All done. You look like a princess." Abby beamed, then grew suddenly serious. "Lauren, now that you're 18, you won't leave us, will you?" The question pierced Lauren's heart. "No, Abby, this is my home now. I promise." Satisfied, Abby skipped from the room, leaving Lauren to finish dressing for her birthday celebration. She chose a simple but elegant emerald dress that Harrison had insisted on having custom-made for the occasion. The color matched her eyes. "Your best feature," Harrison had commented when she'd tried it on, causing an unexpected flutter in her chest. Lauren's relationship with Harrison had evolved in ways neither had anticipated. What began as rescuer and rescued had transformed into a complex connection based on mutual respect, shared grief, and genuine affection. At 34 and 18, they remained carefully appropriate in their interactions, yet both sensed the potential for something deeper in the future when time and circumstances allowed. For now, Harrison was her guardian, her mentor, and her champion. He had insisted on funding her college education, registering her for fall classes at Connecticut College, where she would major in fine arts with a minor in English literature. The commute would allow her to remain at the Wells home, maintaining her place in the family they had built together. "Big day," Thomas said from the doorway, startling Lauren from her thoughts. At 13, he had shot up several inches in recent months, now nearly as tall as Lauren herself. "The biggest," she agreed, turning to face him. "Everything ready for the astronomy demonstration?" Thomas nodded, leaning against the doorframe. "Solar telescope is all set up on the south lawn. Dad invited some kids from the children's hospital to see it, thought it might inspire them." After recovering from his initial suspicion, Thomas had become Lauren's most stalwart ally in the household. Their shared interest in astronomy had blossomed into a genuine friendship that bridged their 5-year age gap. Under Lauren's encouragement, Thomas had developed his science skills into a passion that Harrison proudly supported. "Lauren," Thomas began, uncharacteristically hesitant, "I wanted to give you your present before everyone arrives." He withdrew a small, wrapped package from his pocket. Lauren accepted it, touched by the rare display of sentimentality from the usually stoic boy. She carefully unwrapped it to reveal a leather-bound journal with her initials embossed in silver on the cover. "Open it," Thomas urged. Inside, on the first page, Thomas had written in his precise handwriting, "For Lauren, who taught me that constellations exist both in the sky and in the connections we make with others. Happy birthday." "Thomas," Lauren whispered, genuinely moved. "It's perfect." The boy shrugged, embarrassed by his own emotion. "Just thought you might need somewhere to sketch new ideas for Mom's books." Lauren impulsively hugged him, something that would have been unthinkable 6 months earlier, but now felt natural. After a moment of stiffness, Thomas returned the embrace briefly before pulling away. "Dad's looking for you," he said, retreating to safer conversational ground. "Something about signing the first copies for the publishing people." As Thomas disappeared down the hallway, Lauren slipped the journal into her desk drawer, making a mental note to fill its first page with a sketch of Orion, the constellation that had first connected them that night in the library. Downstairs, the mansion hummed with pre-party activity. Caterers arranged elegant displays in the garden. Florists put final touches on arrangements featuring Caroline's favorite lilies. A string quartet set up near the fountain, tuning their instruments. Lauren found Harrison in his study, surrounded by boxes of books, the first printing of The Little Star Who Found Home. "There she is," he said warmly, looking up as Lauren entered, "the guest of honor and artist extraordinaire." Harrison had changed too over the past months. The perpetual exhaustion that had marked his features had faded. He smiled more easily now, laughed often, and had gradually reduced his punishing work schedule to spend more time with his family. Thomas, Abby, and Lauren included in that definition without qualification. "Nervous?" he asked, recognizing the slight tension in her posture. "A little," Lauren admitted. "It's a lot to take in. The book, college in the fall, being 18. She trailed off, thinking of all that had changed in 6 short months. Harrison nodded, understanding. "I have something for you. A birthday gift and perhaps something more." He opened his desk drawer and withdrew a small blue velvet box. Lauren's heart jumped before Harrison quickly clarified. "It's not what you might think," he said with a gentle smile. "Though perhaps someday when you're older and have experienced more of life." He left the implication hanging delicately between them, an acknowledgement of possibilities yet to come. Lauren accepted the box with slightly trembling fingers. Inside lay an elegant silver key on a simple chain. "It's the key to the house," Harrison explained. "Not the staff key you've been using, but a family key, the one Caroline had made when we first moved here, the one that opens every door, including the private spaces." The symbolism wasn't lost on Lauren. This wasn't just a key to physical spaces, but to permanent belonging. "Harrison, I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," he replied. "Just know that whatever path you choose in life, whatever adventures you pursue, this home and this family will always be yours to return to." Lauren slipped the chain around her neck, the key resting against her collarbone like a talisman. "Thank you for everything." Harrison's expression softened with an emotion Lauren had become brave enough to recognize. "Thank you for teaching us how to live again." A commotion from the garden interrupted the moment. The first guests arriving, Abby's excited voice directing them toward the refreshments. "Shall we?" Harrison offered his arm in a gentlemanly gesture. Together, they walked out into the sunlight to greet their guests. The garden had been transformed for the dual celebration, Lauren's birthday and the book launch. Display stands held enlarged illustrations from the book. A signing table had been set up beneath a flowered arbor. Children from the local hospital, invited as special guests, explored the grounds with wide eyes and wider smiles. Throughout the afternoon, Lauren alternated between birthday celebrant and professional illustrator, signing books and accepting congratulations from Harrison's colleagues and friends who had become her own. Dr. Winters proudly introduced her to medical professionals who had treated her injuries that first night. Harrison's publishing contacts discussed future projects. Abby's teacher praised her artistic talent. As the sun began its descent, casting golden light across the gardens, Harrison called for everyone's attention. Standing on the terrace steps with a champagne flute in hand, he cut an impressive figure. The successful businessman whose greatest success, many now noted, was the family he had rebuilt from tragedy. "Today we celebrate two significant events," he began. "My dear friend Lauren's 18th birthday, and the publication of a very special book. Some of you knew my late wife, Caroline, and her extraordinary imagination. Some of you have watched my children, Thomas and Abigail, navigate the difficult journey of loss with courage beyond their years." He paused, his gaze finding Lauren in the crowd. "And some of you were here 6 months ago, when a remarkable young woman entered our lives and taught us that family is not defined by blood, but by love, by choice, and sometimes by the courage to reach out a hand to someone in need." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathering. Lauren felt a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the summer evening. "The book we launched today, The Little Star Who Found Home, tells the story of a star that falls to Earth and discovers its true purpose in illuminating the darkness for others. Caroline wrote those words years ago, never knowing how prophetic they would be." Harrison's voice grew thick with emotion. Lauren found those stories gathering dust and brought them to life with her extraordinary talent, just as she brought life back to a home that had forgotten how to live. He raised his glass. "So please join me in wishing a very happy birthday to Lauren Mitchell, without whom none of this would be possible. To Lauren, and to finding home in unexpected places." "To Lauren," the guests echoed, raising their glasses. As applause filled the garden, Lauren found herself surrounded by Thomas, Abby, and finally Harrison, their impromptu family circle complete. In their faces, she saw everything she had never dared hope for: acceptance, appreciation, love. Later that evening, after the guests had departed and the children had gone to bed, Lauren stood alone in Caroline's library, now her workspace as well, by Harrison's insistence. The bookshelves gleamed with new organization, Caroline's system preserved but expanded. On a special display shelf sat the first copy of their book, alongside Caroline's original notebook. Lauren ran her fingers over the embossed cover, thinking of the journey that had brought her here. From a battered girl dying in the snow, to a published artist with college ahead and a family behind her. From someone who expected each day to bring new pain, to someone who awakened with anticipation for life's possibilities. Harrison appeared in the doorway, 2 cups of tea in hand. "Mind some company?" Lauren smiled, gesturing to the chair opposite hers. "Never." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping their tea and appreciating the peaceful aftermath of a joyful day. "I've been thinking," Harrison said finally, "about destiny and how easily yours might have been different." Lauren nodded, understanding immediately. "If you hadn't found me that night, or if I had simply called security instead of helping you myself," Harrison added. "So many small decisions that led to this moment." Lauren considered this. "I used to think destiny was fixed, that some people were just born to suffer, while others were born to succeed. Ray told me that often enough. And now," Harrison prompted gently, "now I think destiny is more like one of Caroline's stories. The ending isn't written until you choose it yourself." Lauren touched the key hanging around her neck. "You gave me the chance to choose a different ending, Harrison. Not many people get that opportunity." Harrison set down his cup, his expression serious. "Lauren, there's something I've wanted to ask you. Now that you're 18, legally an adult." He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "The guardianship expires today, but if you're willing, I'd like to discuss the possibility of adoption." Lauren stared at him, stunned. "Adoption? But I'm an adult now." "Adult adoption is completely legal," Harrison explained. "It would make you legally and permanently a member of this family. Thomas and Abby's sister. My daughter." The word daughter resonated through Lauren like a bell. All her life, she had longed for a father who protected rather than harmed, who built up rather than tore down. "This doesn't change anything about how we might feel in the future," Harrison added delicately. "It simply formalizes what we already know to be true, that you belong here with us, that you are family." Tears welled in Lauren's eyes. "You would want that? To make it official?" "More than anything," Harrison confirmed, "but only if it's what you want as well." Lauren thought of all the moments that had led to this one, the terror of being thrown out into the snow, the desperation of that night, the warmth of Harrison's coat around her shoulders, the weeks of healing in his home, Thomas teaching her about nebulae, Abby falling asleep to Caroline's stories, the bus station and Harrison fighting for her to stay, the book they had created together, honoring Caroline's legacy. A life had been built from these moments, brick by precious brick, a foundation stronger than any Lauren had ever known. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and certain. "Yes, I want to be a Wells." Harrison's smile outshone the desk lamp between them. "Then it shall be arranged." Later that night, as Lauren prepared for bed, she found herself drawn to the window overlooking the gardens. The moon illuminated the estate in silver light, transforming the familiar landscape into something magical. From this vantage point, she could see the wing where Thomas and Abby slept, where Harrison's master suite occupied the corner, where their lives unfolded in ordinary and extraordinary ways. 6 months ago, she had been beaten every day by her stepfather. Tonight, she would sleep as the soon-to-be adopted daughter of a man who had changed her destiny through a single act of compassion that had blossomed into lasting love. Lauren pressed her palm against the cool window glass, feeling the boundary between her old life and new. The girl who had survived Ray's brutality would always be part of her, her strength, her resilience. But now that girl had evolved into a young woman with prospects, with talents, with a family who cherished her. "Thank you," she whispered to the night, to fate, to whatever force had placed her in that alley on that particular snowy evening. As she turned from the window, Lauren caught sight of her reflection, no longer a victim, no longer merely surviving. In her eyes shone the light of a destiny rewritten, a future limited only by imagination, and the profound peace that comes from finally, truly being home. Life isn't defined by the wounds we carry, but by how we heal from them. Sometimes that healing comes through our own strength, and sometimes it arrives unexpectedly in the form of a hand reaching out in the darkness. For Lauren Mitchell, that hand belonged to Harrison Wells, who rescued not just her body from the cold, but her spirit from despair. In saving her, he saved his own family, creating a circle of healing that would ripple outward through their shared stories for generations to come. If you've ever felt lost or broken, remember Lauren's journey. Remember that a single act of kindness can alter a life's trajectory, that family can be found in the most unexpected circumstances, and that your destiny is never fixed as long as you have the courage to reach for something better. Your past may shape you, but it doesn't define you. Your future remains unwritten, a blank page awaiting your unique story. And sometimes, when hope seems most distant, rescue arrives in forms we never anticipated, changing everything in ways we never dared to dream possible.